Welcome to Session Sunday. Hi guys, it's Jack Edwards, and this week we're going to be focusing on a small group session. But before we get into this week's video, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe, and if you missed last week's video, click on the link above. Okay, so moving into the first part of this week's session, we're going to be working on a pattern of play, okay, focusing on the tempo of our play, our ability to play first time as well, and the timing of our movements. But before we get into it, let's have a look at how many players we're working with this week and the equipment that we'll be using. So, in terms of players for this week for the small group, we're just going to be doing with 6 players, okay? So obviously if you have less players or even a couple more, we can adapt that as well. In terms of the equipment, we're going to be focusing on using balls, bibs and cones, and then if you have poles or mannequins for this part, that'd be great. And then again, once we move into small-sided games and stuff, if you don't have small-sided goals, you can use poles again to set out an area for a goal. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, you can increase this if you want to as well. So the depth is going to be 25 yards in total. So 5 yards from this player here into here, and then 20 yards here. And then for the width, okay, we're going to do 20 yards of width to start with, obviously the middle point being 10 yards here, but you can increase that if you want to and make the area bigger. Now, the movements in this drill, the players are literally just going to be moving around and coming back to the start, but the passes are different. So, the player here will, when they receive this ball, will always open out. As they open out, okay, this player will pull off into space and receive that diagonal pass, and then it will then get set back into this player in the middle, okay. When this player receives the ball here, okay, they will then look to combine with these two, they will then play into here for these two players to combine, okay. So then what we're then going to see is this player will pull off into here to receive the ball. So this player is going to look to move off into space to receive it. So when this ball gets played into here, that reverse pass into there, and then this player is timing their movement. So as this player takes the touch, they're coming round into space to receive that ball on the run, okay, to then play back to the start. So in terms of the player's movements, so the player who's at the start point and plays this pass here will just move down to the next area in the square, and then this player who set the ball across to here will move up. This player here will move up to this side. The player who's played back to the start will move to here, and then the player who set it into here will move back to the start. Now, what we're focusing on is timing of the movement as well. So when this player opens out, that's when this player wants to pull off into space. And then as that ball is about to travel and go across, that's when this player makes that movement, and then it gets set into space for them to move on to, adjust the body shape to receive it. Then once that contact's getting made with the ball here, this player can pull out into the space, and then this player can time that movement to receive it on the run, and then play back to the start where we look to open out, so create that space to receive the ball, with players literally moving up one each time. And then if you wanted to have the set amount of time, you could have the start point here instead, and then the play can just go the opposite way as well. So it's a good activation drill to do in terms of testing the first touch, our movement, our tempo and execution of our passes as well. We will now move into our first animation before moving on to part 2 of this week's session. Now moving into part 2 of this week's session, we're now moving into an attacking based game which is focusing on the first player to score wins. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on our acceleration into space, okay, and then our quick reactions to score. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, in the middle here, okay, in terms of the width, you're going to want 15 yards, okay, and then just 10 yards either side as well, okay, and then the depth, we're going to go between 15 and 20 yards to the goal in here. So again, between 10 and 15 yards in here, and then 10 yards here as well. So you'll have your area for the goal and a couple of yards either side, and then the depth between 15 and 20 yards. And you're going to split the group into 2 groups of 3. If you have 8 players, 2 groups of 4, and so forth. Now, the coach will have a ball ready as well. So what the players are going to do, okay, they're going to pass the ball to their teammate, and then they're going to sprint around the teammate, okay, here. As they come around the teammate there, it gets set into space, okay, for them to finish in the goal. Now, once the players have finished into the goal, the coach will just drop a ball into here, and the players look to react quickly to turn and finish. Obviously, if one player finishes before the other side, they'll be able to get the ball, turn and finish quickly, okay? Whereas if they both finish at the same time, the ball might get played in and both players are there, and it becomes more of a 1v1 battle for the players to try and beat each other and then look to score. As soon as it's finished, the players who are at the start here just look to move up. Players who were setting back there will move back to the start, and then the players who've just done the finishing will move up to this point here, and the teams obviously will then get ready again. Now, you're going to do a point system. So every time the team scores in the small goal, so you want these to be quite small, so it's quite accurate passes or finishes, they get a point, and every time they score in here, they get a point as well. So each team, there's a chance to get 2 points each round. Like I say, a small sided goal here and a small sided goal here, but this one a little bit bigger. Obviously, if you can't have that, that's fine. Players play in, and then again, can they accelerate quickly? Okay, burst into space. Once they come round here and the ball comes in, composure to play in first time and finish. Same for this player as well. Accelerate into that space, receive that ball and finish. And then as soon as it's over, the coach will just be here and they'll just drop the ball in. So the players have got it here, look to turn, okay, to finish in there, okay, or even let the ball come across the body. If they've got the time, or if they've got a player coming towards them, can they look to shield it, then look to turn and then finish. Obviously, if you have a goalkeeper, you can adapt it where you can have a goalkeeper in this goal and it can be a 1v1 to try and finish past the goalkeeper. But obviously with us working a small group with no keeper, we're just going to have a smaller goal for the players to try and score in. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to the final part of this week's session. Okay, now moving into the final part of this week's session, we're now moving into a possession-based small-sided game, which is going to be focusing on dribbling into the next half to score. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, we're going to have two 15-yard zones, okay, and then we're just going to have a tiny area here, okay, for this floating here, so it can literally be just 2 or 3 yards, okay, just for them to have, because this floating here has to stay in the middle. Now, in terms of the width, it's just going to be 15 yards as well. Quite a tight area to play in. Now, when the team's in possession, they will have the floaters, and the floaters in here will swap over. So this is just the team. So let's say the Blues, after a certain time, can swap out with the Yellows and so forth. So a team will receive the ball, okay, and we combine them with the floaters. So obviously this floater in here, and this floater is free to move, so they get a 3v2. The team, so let's say the Reds, have got to dribble into the other half, okay, to then score. Once they score, all the players move across. So this float will then go into the middle. These blue players get themselves in here, and then again they try to do the same. So using those floaters, okay, to keep the ball, okay, to create the opportunities to receive, drive across or drive into space, and then finish by playing into the small sided goal. Now, for the team who are defending, for them it's okay. Obviously it's a 3v2, but can they just focus on keeping the ball in an area where they're reducing the space to drive forward? So can they see everything in front of them, okay? Then when they try to drive forward, that's when you can engage. Whereas if the ball's just moving around, they're both just chasing the ball, okay, that's when they're going to get picked off, okay, because it's a 4v2. Whereas if they hold the position here, okay, ball travels wide, okay, shuffle across, okay, ball travels high, okay, can they look to step a little bit but retain that shape? And then if the ball goes into this floater here, can they look to drop, okay, and try and prevent those passes going into the attacking players who are looking to drive across. So they're not going to be able to stop every time, every single pass, because it will be difficult, but try and force the team with the ball into errors, okay, into making a pass where they want it to go into a player who they know is going to try and drive into space, where they can go and engage in a 1v1. As soon as they win the ball back, they try and do the same thing. So use the Yellows, okay, to help keep possession, receive the ball, drive into the space, and then finish. And then again, it's a quick reaction. As soon as that's done, this floater moves up, this floater moves in, and they can receive the ball straight away. So if they can receive it straight away, get it, bounce it, okay, they could get it back in here. And then this floater can move here, can get played into here, they can drive into that, receive into this space, and then drive in. So they don't have to dribble from 10 yards away. They can literally be 2 yards away from the line as they receive that ball, and then they just look to drive across and finish. And obviously the defenders can obviously try and stop them as they're driving across from finishing. They can follow, but then we look to score. And then again, quick transition to get across. Okay, floaters coming here, and then we look to get the next ball in and go again. Every time the team scores, they get a point and so forth. And then, like I say, after a set amount of time, the teams can swap over. Yellows can swap with reds, blues can swap with reds after that and everything. And then the teams can just competing against each other to see who can score the most goals. Now, if you do have more players, so if you had 8 players, you could just have 2 teams of 3 and then 2 floaters, and the floaters can just swap over with players after a set amount of time. We will now move into our final animation before concluding this week's session. Thanks for watching this week's video. Don't forget to head over to our website where you can sign up to view all of our exclusive content. And we'll see you next week for another Session Sunday.